This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 253 of Jumblethink.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Jumblethink, where we interview amazing entrepreneurs about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we're going to share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's show is Anup Singh. More about Anup in a moment. Whether you're a new listener, longtime fan, if you haven't subscribed to Jumblethink, right now's the right time to do it. Head on over to your favorite place to listen to podcasts, search for Jumblethink Podcast, and subscribe. For iTunes or Apple Podcast listeners, it's even easier, jumblethink.com/iTunes. And for Spotify, jumblethink.com/Spotify. Take you right to the app, right to where you can subscribe. Now let's jump into today's show. Hey there, welcome to Jumblethink. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. We have a great show lined up for you today. You may be noticing it's Monday, and we have a new episode. What's going on? Well, our episodes release every Tuesday and Thursday. We're throwing in a bonus episode because we have some great shows lined up for you this week. So we wanted to let you in on an extra episode with, he is the co-founder and chief science officer at InnaMed. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Before we get rolling, we want to let you know about a couple cool things. The first thing being, back in June, early June, we were a part of an event called Podcast Row. It is a one-day event where amazing entrepreneurs with crazy cool stories get to come in, meet podcasters like myself and James Elkitcher and many, many others. They get to sit down with us, tell their story on our podcast, and we're going to share those in the weeks to come with you from that event. Well, we were invited back to be a part of Podcast Row July 29th. It's coming up in a couple weeks, and if you are an entrepreneur looking to get your story out, you should be at this event. How can you do it? Head on over to podcast-row.com. While you're there, you can fill out an application, see if you're a good fit. It's a lot of fun. Not only do you get to be interviewed on podcasts, but you get to enjoy some great networking, amazing food, and even sit in on a stand-up session. It's super fun. You should go check it out, podcast-row.com. We also want to thank our friends over at Skillshare for sponsoring today's show. Here is a little bit more about them. I don't know about you, but as an entrepreneur, as a dreamer, as an idea maker, I constantly need to be learning. It's so critical for my success. But as an entrepreneur, I also know that my schedule is crazy busy. So I have to find solutions that fit my schedule. The solution I found? Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community with thousands of amazing classes covering dozens of creative entrepreneurial skills. You can take classes in everything from photography and creative writing to design, productivity, and more. So whether you're returning to a long-time passion project, challenging yourself to go outside your comfort zone, or simply exploring something new, Skillshare has classes for you. As I was searching for classes that I could take, I found one from Gary Vee. And if you know anything about the influencer space, Gary Vee is a shining voice with amazing insights. So who better to learn from than Gary Vee? Now it's your turn to join me and millions of other students already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my listeners. Get 2 months free. That's right, Skillshare is offering Jumblethink listeners 2 months of unlimited access to thousands of classes completely for free. To sign up, all you need to do is go to Skillshare.com/Jumblethink. Again, go to Skillshare.com/Jumblethink to start your 2 free months now. That's Skillshare.com/Jumblethink. On today's show, we have Anup Singh. Who is Anup Singh? Well, he is a co-founder and chief science officer over at InnaMed, a Y Combinator-backed startup that is developing a smart, at-home blood testing device for monitoring chronically ill patients. Prior to InnaMed, Anup was a PhD student at UCLA in bioengineering and completed his BA and MS at the University of Pennsylvania in physics and biophysics. He has co-authored multiple peer-reviewed publications in the fields of microfluidics and point-of-care diagnostics, and has been a speaker at conferences focusing on areas in pharmaceutical and medical technology spaces. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our conversation with today's guest, Anup Singh. Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you.
We are partnering with Republic a little bit, bringing on some of the companies that are on their platform to tell their stories, and Anup is behind one of those. He's a co-founder at InnaMed. They're creating a really, really cool product. So before we really dive in, I want people to know how they can find you. So can you tell people how they can find and connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. So you can find us on our website. So www.innamed. So that's INNAMED.com. We're also doing a fundraising campaign currently at republic.co/InnaMed. If you'd like to support us and you're interested in what we're doing.
So wherever you're listening right now, even if it's radio, head on over to jumblethink.com or check the episode notes on your app, and you'll find all of those links right there, so you can just click on over and check that out. Definitely encourage you to do that. All right. I want to hear a little bit about the backstory, your backstory into entrepreneurship, and then how that transitioned into InnaMed and starting this really cool, innovative medical company.
Sure. Yeah. So my backstory is a little bit non-traditional compared to, I think, what people think about entrepreneurship. So I didn't really get involved with, startups until my senior year of college, when I was working in the same lab as my to-be co-founder, Ishwar. We were working in a bioengineering lab developing smartphone-based tools for monitoring patients with things like concussion recovery, early detection of particular types of cancers, or inflammatory biomarkers. And so the idea behind what we were doing was to enable near patient testing. So if you think about athletes, on the sideline, if you have a concussion, being able to see whether that really is a concussion, whether they need to sit out, or even in the hospital, being able to get rapid results about whether a patient is at risk for a particular type of cancer. And so a lot of that information that things we were working on was very interesting. But we felt there was a bit of a disconnect between what we were working on and what clinicians actually wanted.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what inspired us to start InnaMed, where we could use our background and expertise to develop this system, which is an at-home blood testing device for monitoring patients with chronic conditions, but in particular focusing on areas where physicians would be able to use the data that we enable to be collected and be able to modify therapies in patients. And that close connection between physician data and also patients is really exemplified in what probably most people are familiar with in diabetes testing. So being able to monitor glucose, for diabetics, and having physicians then see that and be able to make a change in your insulin dosing. We're trying to bring that same level of precision medicine into other chronic conditions.
So patient comes in and they say, hey, I've got a problem, or they're admitted to an ER. What's the process, or from a practitioner standpoint, from an individual standpoint, to experience this product? What do they walk through?
Yeah, so we're typically, initially targeting patients who have already been diagnosed. So for our first market we're focused on is heart failure patients, which affects about 6 million people in the U.S., and it's rapidly growing with our aging population. And so after a patient is hospitalized for heart failure, a physician will say, hey, I'd like to prescribe you with the InnaMed device, and the patient will then be trained either by a physician or by a nurse practitioner on how to use that device in the hospital setting, and will then be discharged and sent one of our devices. Now, that device will come with specific testing cartridges, which the patient will use at a given frequency that's prescribed by the physician. So if a patient is high risk, they might need to be doing that testing every couple days. If they're a lower risk, it may be weekly or biweekly. So it just depends on the particular patient. And that data, every time that test is done, will be sent to the provider to be able to see how a patient's therapy is doing, whether they need to increase the dosing, whether they need to decrease it, or whether it's good. And really, dosing of these medications is what will be able to help improve outcomes. And so being able to have more information to be able to do that dosing more frequently is our hypothesis, and how we'll be able to improve those outcomes.
I think that's really cool. And for a lot of individuals, they don't know how to take care of themselves once they leave. They don't know how to monitor. They don't know how to keep on top of it. So solving this problem seems like a very powerful problem to solve and a great resource both to consumers, but it also seems that it would help the medical practitioner, not just from the data they're getting back, but from the workload of having to see people over and over again versus being able to just get their data on a stream a couple times a week.
Exactly. Yeah. So right now, as one of our physician advisors put it, it turns 4 steps into one. So right now, when you have a patient who's at the home and you see that they might need to be getting a therapy change, they need to go, to a laboratory and, get their blood drawn. The laboratory then needs to test that, and then they need to send to the physician. Physician then will need to view it, and then will need to make a therapy change in a way they communicate with the patient. The way we view our potential workflow is that, during some sort of telemedicine visit, a patient can do that test right then and there, and the physician can, within that, 10-minute, 15-minute time frame, will be able to get the results and be able to make a therapy change within that appointment window. And that significantly improves the workflow. And like you mentioned, physicians are already overburdened with all this, data and all this workload that, is leading to burnout. And so being able to simplify their lifestyle as well and allow them to better manage patients at the same time is certainly an ideal goal.
I want to step back here before we wrap up this first segment and ask a couple questions. The first one being, how are you finding purpose in what you do?
Yeah, so, I was at a point in my career where after I graduated from Penn, where I did my undergrad and master's, where I was going on to my PhD program in bioengineering on the West Coast at UCLA. And I started that program while Ishwar and I were working on InnaMed. And, thinking about what I was doing there and what work I wanted to do in the future and how that matched up with InnaMed was sort of, how I evaluated which path I would take. And so, we were working part-time on InnaMed during that time, and we kind of realized that, if we really wanted to, take it forward at the pace we'd like to, it was difficult to be able to balance school and research and, being able to work on the company. And so, I saw that InnaMed was basically allowing me to reach the goals of being able to develop these types of new technologies in healthcare much faster compared to what I was doing in grad school. And so that's sort of what made me decide to take that leap and has sort of driven me to work on this since.
That's super cool. Now, what's the big challenge you're currently working to overcome in InnaMed?
Yeah, so I think in general, it's a problem that a lot of digital healthcare startups face, and that is, just how our health system is structured and how it really is structured in a way that's not ideal for, new technologies. So there's a lot of hurdles when you're trying to introduce new technologies, whether it's physician adoption, the regulatory clearances that are required, and, especially reimbursement. So a lot of these new technologies, while they may, seem to really improve, patient satisfaction and even outcomes, there's still that hurdle of groups like Medicare and Medicaid and other insurance companies being willing to pay for these technologies, and that comes down to the way the health system is structured here. We're really looking to work closely with these insurance companies and reimbursement organizations to demonstrate the technology value. But it's certainly something that has been a hurdle for a lot of companies and will still be something we need to work through.
And finally, as we wrap up this first segment, what's the next big goal you have for InnaMed?
So I think on our end, in the pipeline, besides working with hospitals and healthcare providers, we're looking to work with pharmaceutical companies, and that's an area of a lot of interest in being able to allow for precision dosing of medication, and especially even in the development of drugs, being able to monitor patients closely in clinical trials. And so we have a few of these deals in the pipeline that we're trying to close over the next few months, and that I think will really be able to prove out that market opportunity and show that pharma is moving in the direction of really technology-centered clinical trials, and hopefully that will improve also our drug development processes.
Super cool. We will be back with Anup Singh, and going deeper into InnaMed, we're also going to talk about the healthcare industry as a whole and how technology integrates with that and much, much more. At Jumblethink, we are working hard at some exciting new things coming at you the fall of 2019. Yeah, that's only a couple months away, and we want you to be the first to know. Well, what kind of things are happening? Well, we have some incredible guests lined up. We are going to be launching some new events, doing some live podcast events, and we're also going to be doing some incredible giveaways. To know what's happening, you have to stay in the loop. What are the best ways to do it? Head on over to jumblethink.com. You'll find a great place you can sign up for our newsletter. That way you're the first to know about everything we're doing. You can also find links to our favorite social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Head on over to your favorite social media channel. Let's be friends. And you can always drop me a note. Mike@jumblethink.com. That comes right to me. Let's connect and let's do some exciting things together in the fall of 2019. Today's episode of Jumblethink is being brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of amazing classes covering dozens of creative and entrepreneurial skills. You can take classes in everything from photography and creative writing to design, productivity, and much more. So whether you're returning to a long-time passion project, challenging yourself to get outside your comfort zone, or simply exploring something new, Skillshare has classes for you. Now, for me, one of my biggest regrets was never finishing college. But with Skillshare, I can go back and continue to learn on topics that matter to me. And this is so important to me. So join me and millions of other students already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my listeners. Get 2 months free. That's right, Skillshare is offering Jumblethink listeners 2 months of unlimited access to thousands of courses for free. To sign up, go to Skillshare.com/Jumblethink. Again, go to Skillshare.com/Jumblethink to start your 2 months free now. That's Skillshare.com/Jumblethink. Now let's jump back into our conversation with today's guest, Anup Singh. We are back with Anup Singh. All right. I love what you guys are creating, but one of the things that we talk about a lot here at Jumblethink is innovation. This is definitely an innovative product. The healthcare industry is not really an innovative health structure. It's not structured, as you mentioned before, to integrate innovation and technology rapidly. It is a slow churn, slow process. So talk to us a little bit about the hurdles that you have to overcome when creating a product, innovating in a space, and getting it to the market.
Yeah, so you can have a technology that satisfies patients, that satisfies physicians, and they get very excited about it. But if it's not going to satisfy payers and insurance companies, then it's likely not going to be adopted. And so that's the difficult part with healthcare, is that you can, compared to other industries, like if you're creating a consumer product where you just want your users to love it. But in this case, your users are multiple people. So you have your patients who might love it, you have your physicians who might love it, but you need to make sure that for insurance companies, they're going to be able to either save money or not lose money with it. Yeah. And so that's really, one of the unfortunate things with our healthcare system is it's not as patient-centric as we would like, especially when the patients are the one receiving the care. And I think, as we've seen in the past few years, though, which is a positive, is healthcare is moving a little bit more to what's called value-based care, where payments are being made based on the outcomes that you provide, rather than just the number of times that a patient is seen. And I think with those trends and with the new advent of things like telemedicine, it's slowly moving in the right direction, but slowly is a key word there.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest frustrations with consumers, is that they don't feel like they're getting the care that they should get because they have to jump through the hurdles of insurance providers. A consumer may love this product, a doctor may love it, the insurance company may not like specific things, but you were mentioning there that it's the industry is evolving from being how many times you see a doctor, how much money you use, what are your premiums, to more of a result-based. Talk to us a little bit about how you are able to convert better results for and patients, the practitioner, and then also the insurance company, so that everyone's happy. Because that's got to be really hard to juggle all of those balls and make sure that you're hitting everyone and making giving them what they need and want.
Yeah, exactly. So, for us, the approach we're taking is, even very early on, even though our product still requires to be going through, FDA, and we have to do that stuff as well. We're already engaging with reimbursement groups, so engaging with experienced personnel who have worked closely with Medicare and Medicaid and other, big payers, to sort of understand with them what studies they would like to see with our product, to allow them to be confident in adopting it and ultimately allowing for wider spread adoption. So really, for a lot of digital healthcare companies, being able to engage the payers early on and understand what they want to see, what data will be used to evaluate the product, that's really a key step. And I think one of the reasons why sometimes it can be hard, and we fell into this trap as well. We were fortunate to have good advisors to help us, is that when you're coming from the academic setting, your focus is technology, technology, technology. And unfortunately, when you're going into the healthcare setting, it's the complete opposite. A lot of, as you can see, there are a lot of existing technologies that are, cumbersome to use, or are, not that aesthetic, not patient friendly, but they're still being used to this day because they've, followed the right paths with payers. And so being able to take a step back from the technology and think about how we can show that value to payers is a necessary step that we're working to engage on early on.
Yeah, super cool. All right, I want to go broader here and go into the industry as a whole. You are seeing problems and solving them, bringing better solutions to the market. And we have to go through regulation processes. You mentioned the FDA, and we don't want to say anything here to make them unhappy because we love your product. That process seems to stifle innovation too. So we've talked a little bit about the healthcare and adopting there, and then now we're talking a little bit about the compliance. In innovation, it seems like the more we have regulation, the more we have compliance, the more likely innovation is stifled. How are you overcoming that hurdle of having to deal with a system that is overregulated for many good reasons, whether that's patient care or outcomes that have been detrimental in the past? But you still have to overcome that, and that slows the process. So how are you able to keep the process going forward when you have to comply with regulation like that?
Yeah, so I think, in the broader picture, I think there's often sort of a misconception about the FDA that they are looking to, prevent new types of products and new technologies from coming to the market. Actually, it's quite the opposite now. I think if you're comparing all stakeholders in healthcare and technology, I would say they're on the more innovative side, and they're definitely on the more supportive side. We met with the FDA last year, and this was also a surprise to us as well. They were very excited about having this at-home device, enabling, patient monitoring remotely. And even though it comes with, some higher risks compared to what's currently the standard of care, I think they really view that innovation as moving forward, and they're very supportive of that, which I think is really, really positive. And I think the other thing is, they're looking to, stay ahead, be at the forefront. So there's this advent of AI-based technologies as well, which they're developing new regulatory protocols for to ensure that it's being used safely and effectively, the data is being secure, all of that good stuff. And so I think, the conception with the FDA of being sort of a slow regulatory, sort of overbearing group is, I think, it's sort of what's been, people have been thinking about in the industry. But I would say that in our experience, and I think in a lot of other companies' experience, they're certainly more towards the end of more technology savvy and looking to bring new positive technologies into the industry, which is exciting.
Yeah, I think that really surprises me, because whether it's how things are politicized or whether it's the way how the media interprets healthcare, that's not the narrative that you hear often. You hear the FDA, big bad wolf. They're trying to eat up everything that they can. They're holding up the process. They're slowing it down. So it's really encouraging to hear that sometimes what we hear isn't the truth, and there's much more to the picture.
Yeah, I think, what I would say is I think a lot of the press you hear about that is likely from companies who have tried to sidestep the process or, have not had a great experience. But I think it's, more towards, those companies not, following all the right requirements and trying to cut corners rather than actually facing the FDA, head on and working with them, because you should, view them, I think, as partners, because that's how we view them. And I think the regulatory processes they have in place are, for the most part, pretty good. But I think a lot of the press that comes out is with people, complaining about it because it has maybe hurt them. But, the reasons behind that, I think, are not fully on the FDA to blame.
And the FDA is not coming out and going, hey, yeah, that's not true. They just do their thing and they're like, who cares what,
Exactly.
I think what you're doing is fascinating because it's not only integrating technology, it's innovating in philosophies and approaches. But I think it's really interesting because there's a lot of space in which this could be a product or a tool that's used beyond even the initial version. So as you grow what you're doing, you mentioned working with heart failure, kidney failure, some problems like that. How are you seeing which places you want to invest next as you develop?
Yeah, so I think the way we think about it is looking to focus in areas where frequent testing is currently being done and it's a significant burden for patients,
Yeah.
or where frequent testing, could be added or incorporated to improve outcomes. So, there's a variety. You mentioned heart failure, kidney failure, transplant patients. There's applications in fertility, and especially also on the rare disease side, working with pharmaceutical companies closely who are developing drugs for rare disease patients to better monitor those patient populations, especially because oftentimes those drugs, command very high prices. And from the payer side, they want to make sure that they're going to be able to get optimal outcomes with those drugs. And so being able to pair those with a diagnostic tool that can help better dose those drugs and better titrate them certainly is an area of interest and growing interest. And that's an area which we're looking to get into as well over the next few years.
Which is really cool that there is potential for growth. It's not a product that is super hyper focused that's all it can do ever, but that's something that could really evolve into a future forward product for a bunch of problems.
Yep. Yeah.
I want to pivot here and talk a little bit about your work or using the platform Republic to help raise funds. People listening may be going, this sounds really cool. I've dealt with heart failure, or my father or mother dealt with this, or a cousin or family member. And they may be looking and saying, hey, I'd love to get involved in this. You have chosen to be on Republic and raise some funding there. So talk to us a little bit about how people can get involved from that standpoint.
Yeah, so the Republic platform is very interesting. So my co-founder and I weren't too aware of crowdfunding before we, hopped onto the Republic platform. We were fortunate to be connected with the folks there, and essentially what we learned is that, with crowdfunding, you can get a really wide variety of different types of investors, and the flexibility also of investing. You can invest as little as $60 in campaigns like ours, or you can, invest how you typically would if you're a traditional accredited investor. But that flexibility, I think, to your point, really lends a much broader audience. So we have examples of investors who are directors of heart failure clinics in the U.S. and Canada. Like you mentioned, people whose family members have had heart failure and they've seen that firsthand and can see the benefit of the product to those patients. And then general population who have experienced blood testing and really see that there can be a lot of improvements on it, and they would like to be part of that movement. I think the diversity of investors and being able to, get consumers on board with this and being able to be part of that movement is very exciting and thrilling for us to see that sort of support.
And so, how are you using the funds that you raise here to? What is the where are you going to put that money? I guess is a good way to ask it.
Yep. So the focus of that funding is one, to grow the team. So in addition to our executive team right now, we have one full-time research and development scientist. We've just hired a second who is starting in August, and we'll be looking to add probably 1 to 2 more people in the next couple months to help with both product development as well as the assay development, so further developing new tests in our pipeline. Secondly, we'll also be looking to grow our pharmaceutical pipeline with companies that we're looking to partner with and develop tests for on our platform, for being able to enable at-home monitoring for some of the disease areas that I mentioned earlier. And then on the third end, looking to begin early stage contract manufacturing with outsourced groups, both on the East Coast and the West Coast, to be able to take our current prototypes and develop them into early stage products, which we can then demo for investors as we prepare to raise our much larger Series A round in sort of the next 6 months or so.
Super, super cool. We're going to take a break right here, and we'll be back with Anup Singh to do rapid fire questions. Before we jump back into rapid fire questions with Anup Singh, I wanted to remind you that we are changing it back up here. We've gotten tons of feedback. When we switched to radio, we changed our schedule to Tuesdays and Fridays for new episodes. For the podcast, we're going back to Tuesdays and Thursdays. The radio will still be Tuesdays and Fridays. On tomorrow's episode, we have Derek Waleko from Upsonder on the show. They are doing crazy cool things with drones. That's going to be a lot of fun. So you're going to want to check that out tomorrow. That's Tuesday. And then Thursday, we have a special guest lined up for you. You're going to have to wait to see who that is and come back and check out that episode. Now let's jump into rapid fire questions with today's guest, Anup Singh. We are back with Anup Singh. All right, we're doing rapid fire questions. Are you ready for rapid fire questions?
I think so.
Okay, first question is, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I know I was always fascinated by space, so an astronaut.
Cool. What's one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
So I'd say, when you think about what you want to do, break it down into achievable milestones and take it one step at a time.
What's one big lie about entrepreneurship that you wish you could break?
It's not a, get rich quickly scheme. There's a lot more work that goes into it.
What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
I think a much bigger focus on climate change, especially from big corporations, would be a huge step forward.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I would say being able to improve healthcare in a way that is patient-centric and sort of shifting away from, how a lot of these big payer groups and providers are controlling it right now.
Where do you find inspiration?
So, in startups, you always have ups and downs. And I think when you're in those downs, reading about stories of other people who have had, much lower downs than you, I think certainly helps inspire us and keep us going.
Well, I want to take that question one step further because I love that answer. And I don't hear that answer often to that question. Who's a specific person of history that you look to and that really inspires you?
Well, I can't give you a specific name, but I would say that, in my experience, especially, as we went through a startup accelerator program, hearing stories of people, I'll give you a specific name, the founders of Airbnb, they came and spoke at our program. And I think, them talking about how they, basically needed to do anything to be able to pay rent and, getting started with the company just in time for like the Democratic conventions. These things where you're scrappy and you need to be able to just survive allows you to think outside the box and do whatever you can. And for us, being able to do the same, I think has really helped us from near-death experiences in the company.
Super cool. Sounds like there's some good stories there, though.
Yes. Yeah.
What is one book you think every entrepreneur and dreamer should read?
So I really like the Steve Jobs biography.
Okay.
And I think for two main reasons. One is it really gives you a sense of what it's like to be in Silicon Valley. And if you're a startup founder, being able to spend time there, even for a short time, I think is really valuable. But the second thing it also shows is, there's a lot of opportunities to learn from people who, might seem to have been amazing, and he certainly was amazing. But I think a lot of things like, how you manage employees and deal with people, there could have been improvements there. So I think being able to learn from that as well is helpful.
How do you define success?
Making a living doing what you love.
What is one trend you're currently excited about?
I think this sort of advent of sustainable meat production and being able to nowadays create different types of meats out of non-meat products, I think is just really cool.
What's one habit you find helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
So I try every morning to wake up early and work out. I think that usually gives me a lot of energy for the day, and getting the day started early just helps everything stay on track.
What is one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out?
So I think both my co-founder and I would agree on this, that trusting our own judgment. I think advisors can certainly be helpful and give you advice, but I think you need to also trust yourself in your decisions and your judgment, because you're the ones who ultimately know your business best.
I want to ask a follow-up question to that because I know for me, there are decisions I make in my business, and there are decisions I make because I'm like, oh, there's a dollar sign attached and I need the money right now. We need cash flow. And then there's decisions I make because I know that's the right decision. And usually there's this place in which I make a decision and I'm like, I know that I shouldn't be doing this choice. This is not going to end up well. And you don't think that at the beginning. You go, oh, we have the cash flow and this is a good project. We'll take it on. That sounds great. How do you navigate those decisions where you're like, you need something like cash flow or specific relationship for you, it'd be getting a product in front of the right person or something, and that gut instinct that says this isn't the right decision, and how do you navigate processing those decisions?
Yeah, I think it's about thinking about how this decision will impact us, a couple of years from now.
Okay.
So, for example, if we're taking on like a deal with a pharmaceutical company, it might be, in your example, near-term cash flow. But 2 or 3 years from now, if it ends up taking up half of the company members' time, when it's not really a main focus and it's not necessarily going to be that lucrative, that's when you realize that it's not going to be a good use of time. And so thinking about down the line what the upside of these potential deals would be, and how that fits in with the broader focus of the company is how we kind of evaluate things.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I think I would probably still be in my PhD program,
Okay.
working on similar types of technologies, but more in the laboratory setting.
And our final rapid fire question, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
So I think, when I was growing up, I got an opportunity to travel a lot because my father is a professor and we traveled a lot with him for conferences. I think I would really like to have the opportunity to live in another country, even if it's not for too long, but just get that experience and sort of experience life on a different area.
As we wrap up today's show, what is the final thought you want to leave all of us with?
So I think people who are thinking about jumping into entrepreneurship or who feel like they're not qualified or don't have enough preparation, I think I can be an example of someone who really didn't think about it at all. And even, when we were working on InnaMed part-time as students, I didn't think there'd be any way I'd be working on this full-time right now. And so I think, just sort of taking opportunities as they come and seeing where they go, but keeping an open mind is, I think, very important, no matter what you do, but in particular in entrepreneurship. I think that's very valuable.
Anup, thank you so much for taking time out, sharing the story behind InnaMed and all you're doing. We wish you the best.
Thanks so much.
Once again, we want to thank today's guest, Anup Singh, for taking time out to be with us. Make sure to check out what they're doing. All the links to their website and to the Republic campaign can be found at jumblethink.com and in the episode notes for today's show. We also want to thank Skillshare for sponsoring today's show. They are offering incredible online courses, and for you, our listeners, they're giving you 2 months free. All you have to do, Skillshare.com/jumblethink. Visit that website, sign up, and you get those 2 months free. We also want to thank you for tuning in to today's show. It means the world to us that you would listen. And I hope it's encouraged you in the journey of chasing your own dreams and ideas, encouraged you to take the risks of stepping into the unknown, and ultimately to give you the inspiration to actually make the step forward. So now it's your turn. Get out there, dream big, and change the world around you.
Vous devez écouter ce disque plusieurs fois pour bien en comprendre le mécanisme. Pourtant, il n'est qu'un commencement. Nous avons voulu en faire connaître la force. comment un simple disque peut aller plus loin que vous ne l'auriez imaginé. Mettez-vous dans une tenue légère. Ôtez tout ce qui peut vous gêner ou tirer votre attention. Cherchez la meilleure position. Les bras et les jambes légèrement espacés. Étirez-vous doucement, mais complètement. En avant, en arrière, sur les côtés. Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.